Okay, I think we're live. Let's do this stream. So, what am I going to talk about? So we had these terrible floods in Texas, and there was a lot of focus on Texas basically being in denial about there being a terrible storm coming and not wanting to rock the boat on the 4th of July. So they basically didn't send out any messages or warnings. That's the only real interpretation you could have about this whole kerfuffle. And that's fine. That's their choice. They can do that. That's perfectly acceptable that they would take that approach. And perfectly understandable. A lot of jurisdictions would. They would say, this doesn't look important to us. We're not going to interfere with people's weekend. And so they just wouldn't say anything. And they didn't. And then I don't know what the death toll is up to now. I think probably something over 200 people will eventually be considered dead and or missing and assumed dead. This is an absolute catastrophe to be happening in the United States of America. We don't have death tolls like this. But here we go. Now we have one. We have our own mass basically killing, and probably could have been avoided. And so naturally the authorities are running around pointing fingers, and some of the finger pointing is fairly unhinged. They're blaming the National Weather Service, which the Trump administration has been defunding. Okay, they're blaming the National Weather Service for not sending a message at all, when in fact they did. Then they were blaming someone in the Texas bureaucracy for not forwarding the message, but they had fired the guy like 2 weeks earlier, or forced him into retirement or something. And it's just this. It must be something woke. It must be some part of the federal government that Biden created. It's pretty unhinged, but they're desperate, and because they know they screwed up. And once the congressional hearings are accomplished, and once the local investigation is finished, we'll all know. We'll have the timelines, we'll have the receipts, we'll know everything that happened in Texas. But in the meantime, it's interesting and I think illustrative to watch how they're coping with this and who they're blaming. Okay, because one of the things that's come out of this has been something that, how do we even start this? All right, so let's go to the evidence. Here it is. So there's two things happening on this screen, and that's why I picked this one. The first is the article. This is CNN, but this is just news. Okay, this isn't them making shit up. This is news. Conspiracy theorists blame Texas flash floods on cloud seeding. That's true. That's a fact. I've also heard it titled slightly differently. Conspiracy theorists blame Texas flash floods on geoengineering. I've actually heard that term being used in different contexts than this one. Why CNN changed it to cloud seeding, I'm not exactly sure. I think maybe they're trying to help people because geoengineering is a technical term and no one really knows what that means. Scientists do, I do, but the average lay person doesn't know what geoengineering is. That's how it's being discussed, though. And here they can title their articles whatever they want. The other thing that's happening here is that they're reporting that Marjorie Taylor Greene, the gadfly in Congress, the day after the disaster, and this is critical, the day after, on the 5th of July, she introduced a bill prohibiting injection, release, or dispersion of chemicals or substances into the atmosphere. So this is chemtrails. Chemtrails is an old bugaboo, goes back to, I don't know, the 80s maybe, that the governments of the world, there's a cabal, there's a conspiracy, reptilians, whatever they think it is, that jet aircraft crossing back and forth in the atmosphere are spraying out chemicals. And you can see it behind the jets. It's this white cloud that goes behind the jet. Well, that has a name. It's called a contrail, which is a short for condensation trail. Condensation, because when you burn fossil fuels, and that's what jet fuel is, you get carbon dioxide and water as your principal waste products, plus all the heat, which is what drives the jet forward. But you get carbon dioxide and water. And the water vapor at those altitudes, it simply condenses immediately. It's no longer invisible water vapor. It's a cloud. You're basically making a cloud behind the jet by spewing out water vapor from the jet engine, from the jet fuel. So that's how that works. And they're called contrails, a shortened form of condensation trails. It's condensed water. So that got turned from condensation trails into chemtrails. And you can almost see how that works. Chemtrails being short for chemical trails. What's the chemicals? No one even knows what the chemicals are. It doesn't matter. When you're doing conspiracies, you want to be light on details. You certainly want to be light on the science, because science and physics, these are provable things. And if you say, oh, there's a particular chemical in these chemtrails, well, somebody could test that. Is there a chemical like that in the chemtrails? And so you don't want specifics. You want to be very vague. So the condensation trails, the contrails, become chemtrails, and that's with us to this day. So on the 5th of July, the day after the disaster, before they even know the extent of the disaster, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's always running cover for people, says that it's going to be a felony to have chemtrails and this and that. We must end the dangerous and deadly practice of weather modification and geoengineering. And that's what the people in Texas are now saying. They're saying that this storm was geoengineered. It's just another conspiracy on top of all the others. Who would create this storm? Why would they create this storm? It was a named storm. It was Tropical Storm Barry. It was created in the Gulf of Mexico, where all the heat is. It came ashore in Mexico, killed a half dozen or more people, wrecked the coastline, went up the coastline into Texas and wrecked Texas, dropping 15 inches of rain. That's what happens all the time in the U.S., especially in the coastal states. Hurricane Helene, a remnant low from Hurricane Helene, went into Appalachia and dumped 20 inches of rain and destroyed those people. Now, they were not at the time blaming that on chemtrails or chemical manipulation or weather manipulation. Maybe they are now. Maybe since this kerfluffle has come up in Texas, maybe now those people in Appalachia will say, oh, yeah, that happened to us too. I don't know what these people are thinking, okay? They're just making it up as they go. Because, of course, the authorities in Texas are going to promote this. This is going to be all over the news. This is going to be all over the press releases when they have their press conferences and they're talking to the reporters, and the first responders are talking to the reporters. They're going to say, well, we don't know what this storm came from. It could have been chemtrails. It could have been geoengineering. We don't know. We're not ruling anything out. Hey, you know what they're going to say. You know how they're going to go about it. It was a tropical storm. It formed in the Gulf of Mexico. It's all driven by global heating. But they're not going to talk about that. But what's interesting about this, there's two things that's interesting about this. And I'm going to get to the somewhat ancillary, secondary effect of this. And I'm going to blame this entire narrative, including the word geoengineering and weather manipulation and I'm going to blame all of this on scientists, because in the climate science discussions, people like me on YouTube, Peter Carter, Paul Beckwith, James Hansen, a lot of climate scientists too. Kevin Anderson, possibly? Maybe Kevin Anderson. Anyway, a lot of climate scientists are losing their minds over global heating. A lot of climate scientists are recognizing there's no way out. We're going to die. The weather is going to reflect global heating. The heat will reflect global heating. It's going to be hurricanes and tornadoes and floods and droughts and heat and the whole thing, all of it. Biblical plagues of horrendous happenings, and they're already happening. We just had one in Texas. The amount of flooding right now in the United States of America is pretty crazy. And it's not just, it rained somewhere and there was some water in someone's driveway. The flooding in places like New Jersey, Chicago, parts of New York has been completely unhinged. Entire communities underwater, up to their waist. And this is just unheard of. And this flooding in Texas, even though this was called Flash Flood Alley and the whole thing, it's off the scale. And of course, the reason why it's off the scale is because of global heating. Do I even need to go into that? This is the sort of stuff that's going to happen. That's just, there you go. Here we are. We're now on the jaws of the beast. We're now on the jaws of disaster, and there's no way out. And climate scientists know this. They know it better than anybody. And because I listen to them and because I see the data, yes, I agree. We are now in the jaws of disaster. And so the climate scientists, because they're trying to be responsible, they've been trying for 70 years to be responsible, and they've been thwarted at every turn by the energy industries, by the auto industries, by the airline industries, by the tourist industries. They've been thwarted at every turn. The Chamber of Commerce, all of it. And when they go to Congress and they try to get time in Congress, they're having to fight with the lobbyists from the energy sector. And it's just been 70 years of rearguard battle and retreats and losing ground. And now they're losing their minds. They're depressed. They're fearful, and they're trying to pull the chestnuts out of the fire. They're trying to save humanity, and so they're talking about geoengineering. And this term geoengineering has been introduced by scientists into the lexicon of talking about global heating and global climate change. Geoengineering. We're going to save ourselves from our own folly by modifying the planet. This is completely unhinged. I did a video on this some time back. This is insane. This entire discussion of geoengineering is absolutely insane. It cannot possibly happen. It won't be allowed to happen. Geoengineering is likely, if you did it unilaterally, if the United States just decided to do it and fuck all the rest of the world, it would likely be the cause of World War III. You just can't do it. And the nations of the world are not going to agree to do it. There's the amount of money, and frankly, having somebody that it's not yourself, flying over your country, spraying actual chemicals. Now we're talking chemtrails. Not a conspiracy by reptilians to sterilize the white male population of the United States, which is where a lot of this chemtrail bullshit goes. But the actual application of chemicals into the atmosphere, doing actual geoengineering to try and save us from global heating, it's never going to work. It's never going to happen. It won't be allowed to happen. It'll cause World War III. And plus, it'll finally give oxygen to all these conspiracies that have been floating around about chemtrails. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying she's going to introduce legislation that'll make it a felony offense to do chemtrails and to do weather modification. And she's using the word, or somebody's using the word, I don't think it's actually in her legislation, about geoengineering. Geoengineering is going to be made a felony. So there you go. That's what I said before. Geoengineering is going to be a felony. And if it's not a felony and you do it anyway, it's going to be the genesis of World War III. So it's never going to happen. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, all you scientists out there losing your minds over the terrible calamity we're in. Forget the geoengineering. It's not going to happen. But the fact that the scientists brought this up and introduced this into the discussion, introduced this word into the discussion, has now fucked them. They're fucked. Because they're the ones who talked about geoengineering the planet. They actually had that discussion. They talk about it all the time, incessantly. Marine cloud brightening, aerosol manipulation, mirrors in space. It's just so fucking stupid. It is so fucking juvenile to talk about this. Every time I hear it, I just want to hit somebody. Shut up about it. And now we see what's happening now because of the Texas floods. Now the scientists are being blamed for geoengineering because they've been fucking talking about it as the solution to global heating. Now, these Texans, they don't believe in global heating, but they do believe that scientists believe it, and they believe the scientists are talking about chemtrails and geoengineering to help address global heating. And even though global heating is fake, they're going to do this, and they're going to do this for some other conspiracy reason, probably to sterilize the white male population in North America, because that's what these people think. I'm not making that shit up. I'm not making that up. I'm not clever enough to make up the kind of shit that they believe. So now that the scientists have introduced geoengineering as the solution to global heating, which it won't be, but they're just fantasizing about it, trying to be responsible, trying to be solutionary. And this is how it happens, and it probably would happen to me if I had a user base, which I don't, thank God. But it would happen to me too. So you think global heating is a problem? So what are you going to do? What's your solution, Mr. Sad and lonely and doomer? What's your solution? Okay, and so when responsible, intelligent people are trying to warn the planet that there's a massive problem, and then some gadfly, some reporter, some crank comes up and says, "Okay, well, smart guy, smarty pants, what's your solution?" Okay, first of all, the answer has to be there is no solution, because this is a wicked problem, and when you have a wicked problem, all of your solutions are as bad or worse than the originally stated problem. That is a wicked problem. I am defining global climate change, global heating, whatever you want to call it, as a wicked problem. There is no solution. But Cougar, there's always a solution. No, I'm sorry, there's not. There is no solution to this that isn't as bad or worse than the original. Because the answer to the question, so smarty pants, what are you going to do about this? If it's such a big fucking problem, what do you propose, Mr. Smart Guy, Mr. PhD, Mr. Bulb Head? What do you want to do? And so they can't say the thing that must be done. And I kind of understand why they can't say the thing that must be done, the only thing, because it sounds nightmarish and horrific. And so they say something that cannot be done, that is just esoteric and abstract and complicated enough that they don't have to explain it. But it cannot be done. They say it knowing that it will not be done, because the actual solution, which is, again, as bad or worse than the originally stated problem, because wicked problem, they cannot say it. They cannot say the actual solution. And I'm stringing you on here because I want you to understand that if someone came to me and asked me, all right, Mr. Smarty Pants, Mr. PhD, what's your solution to this big, terrible problem you've discovered? Now you're sharing with all of us and scaring us all, making us wet our pants. What's your proposed solution? And I would not say geoengineering, because that's stupid. That's a stupid solution. It'll cause World War III. Is that not a problem? Yeah, that's a big problem for me, all right? So no, I'm not going to recommend geoengineering because it's infantile, juvenile, and stupid. Let's see my earlier work about why I feel that way. What I would tell people, what I would tell the reporter or the MAGA pinhead who's asking me what's my solution would be leave fossil fuels in the ground. Oh, no, surely not. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. That's why this is a wicked problem. And does that really solve anything? Well, it wouldn't reverse the situation that gave us the flooding in Texas. Oh, yeah, that's now reality for them. That's going to happen again. We can't undo that. And we can't undo the one that's yet to come. It's going to come again. And these people are going to be flooded again. And it's going to happen over and over and over because the conditions that created Tropical Storm Barry, that then went into the Badlands of Texas and killed 200 people, those conditions that made all that possible, it's in the Gulf of Mexico. And the Gulf of Mexico isn't going away. And those conditions aren't changing, except they probably will get worse. And so we can only expect more of the same, if not worse. So there you go. We still have to stop burning fossil fuels. That's it. Well, how do we do that? Oh, no, I don't know. We're mining them. We're pulling them out of the ground. We're mining the coal. Just stop doing it. But what about our economy? Yeah, I know. It sucks. Yeah. 999 out of 1,000 people are going to die without fossil fuels. But on the other hand, 999 out of 1,000 people are going to die due to global heating. So how do you want to do this? But you can't know that. Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes. And the math ain't that hard. If 999 out of 1,000 people die, we're still left with 8 million people. That's a lot of people. But that's about what this earth can handle. In its current state. So I am blaming science. I am blaming the well-intentioned, I want to make this very clear, they are well-intentioned. These are professional men and women who are depressed and probably suicidal over the fact that humanity never did anything about global heating, never lifted a finger, will not lift a finger. They have seen the handwriting on the wall. Their entire career has been devoted to alerting humanity to this problem and getting humanity to do something, anything to save itself. Never lifted a finger. We've had 30 conferences of the parties, the COPs, 30 COPs. How many IPCC reports have we have? How many recommendations have we had? We signed the Paris Climate Accords. What else do we have to do? An entire career of doing these things. Never lifted a finger. Consuming more fossil fuels this year than we have in any other previous year. Emitting more CO2 into the atmosphere than we have ever emitted before. It never lifted a finger. And so in their grief and in their remorse and in their regret, they're trying to solve the problem, and they recommend geoengineering. And so now these feckless Texans have glommed onto that and say there's a spoken conspiracy in the scientific community to geoengineer the weather and do this and do that and the other thing. And okay, scientists are talking about this because they're trying to save humanity from extinction. Not a bad idea. It's never going to work. It's going to cause World War III. There'll never be funding for it. And now, as we see with the MAGA pinheads, you're gonna be arrested and thrown in prison for even talking about it. So forget it. Forget your geoengineering. It's not going to happen, people. Stop talking about it. So what is going to happen? I don't know. Like I told my wife the other day. The future isn't certain. I really don't know what's going to happen in the future. I know things are going to get worse and everything else. But there is one thing I do know for certain. You're going to be growing your own food. Full stop. I mean, that's it. You're going to be growing your own food. And there may be some other things. You may be living underground. You'll probably be reformatting your community into village life, right? Circling your wagons and protecting your crops from marauders and animals and whatnot because you'd like to eat. So, there may be some other things that'll happen. But yeah, I don't really know what the future holds, but I'm fairly certain that you'll be growing your own food. And the corollary to that is if you're not growing your own food, then you're dead. So there you go. I don't think we need to talk about geoengineering. We just don't. So this is now our situation. We are in big trouble. We're done for. It's happening. The weather is turning bad. It's going to kill us. It's going to kill large numbers of people. It's going to do it in the United States of America. It's going to do it in South America, Africa. It's going to do it in all the parts of Europe, Russia, China, all of Asia. All of the Pacific Islands are going to go underwater that we're in for it. And you can talk about, solutions if you feel like you have to do that, but it's dumb. There are no solutions. And we have to leave fossil fuels in the ground, and that's not a solution either. It just possibly keeps it from getting worse. So is that worth doing? Most people won't do it. They won't do it to save the future. They just won't do it. Now we'll get this kind of stuff. We'll get blaming. We'll blame the scientists for the floods in Texas because the scientists were thinking about having a conference to review the possibility of geoengineering, which will never happen. But now that they've brought it up, there you go. Now they're going to get blamed, even if they don't do it. Even if there never is a conference, even if there never is a treaty, even if there never is a UN equivalent of the COPs, the Conference of the Party. Maybe the Conference of the Parties stops talking about global heating and climate change and just talks about geoengineering from here on out. How we're going to save ourselves. Now that'd make a little bit of sense to me that they would do that. But it doesn't matter if they do it or they don't. Now it's out there. Scientists have been talking about geoengineering. So there you go. There was another point I wanted to make. Let's see, what was it? I can't remember now what it was. I should have written it down. But this was the most important thing, really, that I wanted to address. And if I can remember what that other point was, maybe I'll come back on here and do another video. Short video is good because I have other things to do. So, so we'll leave it at that for now. Where does all this go? The trends that I have been identifying for the last several months, really since the Trump administration came floating into our world, have just continued. We are going to continue to defund critical U.S. departments that are kind of trying to warn people of what's coming, that's studying the situation with the world globally and also locally. We're going to lose our ability to forecast. We're going to lose our ability to warn people. And in the case of Texas, we still had the ability, and they just didn't want to hear it. So our head is going into the sand or up our backside, however you want to look at it. And the only thing that's going to really come out of all this is that scientists will be blamed for every bad thing that happens. Because scientists, in their, well-intentioned but misinformed effort to be solutionary, they basically opened themselves up to accusations. And that's what Americans want. They want someone to point the finger at, because I just remembered my second point. Because they don't want responsibility for this. And that is my second point. So Marjorie Taylor Greene over here is saying, and watch this wording carefully. I'll go back to it. Hold on. Watch this wording. This is really interesting wording. It's unintentional, but watch what happens. I'm introducing a bill that prohibits the injection, release, or dispersion of chemicals or substances into the atmosphere for the express purpose of altering weather. Okay, we must end the dangerous and deadly practice of weather modification and geoengineering. We've been doing that. We've been doing that. She says here, I should go back to her original tweet, but she says here, I've been researching weather modification and working with the legislation. Okay, we have been doing weather modification. We have been doing, we have been doing climate manipulation. We have been altering the Earth dynamic system for probably 300 years in a really big way. Svante Arrhenius thought it was a big enough deal that he studied it. We've had all these COPs talking about it. We've had all these IPCC reports talking about it, because we know exactly what we're doing. We've been doing this for a long time. And of course, what we're doing is we're releasing CO2, excess CO2 into the atmosphere. And that is putting the greenhouse effect. It's enhancing the greenhouse effect and putting the Earth in energy imbalance. And we've been doing that. And we've been doing that deliberately, because we like burning fossil fuels. And we'd rather burn fossil fuels than not burn them. And we know that it releases CO2, and we've known that for 300 years, or at least 200. Yeah, we know that that's happening. We're doing it deliberately. The energy companies know it's happening, in particular the fossil fuel companies know it's happening, and the global scientific community knows it's happening, and we're still doing it. So we are deliberately injecting substances into the atmosphere. We are doing geoengineering, and we have been for 200 years. And for 200 years, we've known we're doing that. And for 200 years, we've talked about it. More intently, recently, fair enough. But recently means 70 years of that 300 years. And for 200 years, we've talked about it. And for 70 years, we've done science on it, hardcore science. And we have specialty satellites, and we have specialty floats in the oceans, and we have specialty, college departments of study. We have glaciologists up on the Greenland ice sheet trying to study how the ice is melting. We know exactly what we're doing, and we're studying it. And we have data, and we have satellite images, and we have, the Mauna Loa observatory collecting CO2 samples and putting out a weekly report, which has now been defunded by the United States of America. Not that that work can be done somewhere else, and probably will be done somewhere else, but the iconic Mauna Loa work is now over because of Trump. Because we don't want the data. Because we know what the data shows. Because we know what we're doing. It's geoengineering. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't want geoengineering. We're doing geoengineering, Marjorie, and it's not the scientists. It's industry, it's consumerism, it's driving and flying and moving goods and Amazon Prime deliveries to your home and pizza deliveries to your home. It's all of that. It's everything. And people commuting from the suburbs to work and back again and vacationing in Florida and flying around the world. And, we've been doing this. And we like doing this. And we're going to keep doing this. And it's geoengineering. We're changing the planet. Now, I don't know if I've said this on here, on this channel before, but here's something I want to put out there. It's possible that if we wanted to avoid an ice age in the future, well, the ice age is the million-year event, a glacial maximum, a glacial advance, which people in vernacular call an ice age. The ice age is more like 5 million years, but because it's an age. But the glacial advances and retreats, these are events, okay? And if we knew, as we did in the 70s, when people basically discovered the Milankovitch cycles and how those are attributed to the advancing and retreats of the glaciers on the planet, having discovered the Milankovitch cycles and having recognized the role that CO2 plays in allowing the orbital mechanics of the planet relative to the sun and which is the source of all energy for Earth, to enhance or retard the energy imbalance on Earth. But if we had learned that in the 70s and we wanted to stop the next glacial advance, then one of the proposals might have been, were we not already doing it, would be to find carbon sources in the ground, dig them up, and set them on fire, because that would cause CO2 emissions into the atmosphere, that would enhance the greenhouse effect. And having enhanced the greenhouse effect, we could reduce the risk of another glacial epoch. We could do that. That could have been a proposal in the 70s. Now, nobody proposed that because nobody cared. The Milankovitch cycles is a curiosity, and the glaciers coming and going is just so far off, no one cared about it. But they did say in the 70s, and it was the cover of Time magazine, we could go into another ice age. And they talked about, what that would affect the northern hemisphere would be covered in ice and long winters and, cold winters and cold summers and the growing season would shorten. And they talked all about it because they had discovered the Milankovitch cycles and they were very excited about another glacial epoch starting any time now, really. So had we feared that, we could have proposed some geoengineering. Burn lots of fossil fuels, get them up in the sky, put the CO2 up there, that'll warm the planet, and maybe we won't have to worry about another glacial advance. We could have proposed that. Now, as it happens, we were already burning fossil fuels, but people could have said we should burn more. We should find more uses for fossil fuels. We should just dig them out of the ground and set them on fire. Just do it. Just make sure there's lots of CO2 in the atmosphere. We could have proposed that. I don't think anybody did. But I was a child back then, so maybe they did and I didn't notice it. As it happens, we did it. We're geoengineering the planet. And I don't know how many other people, it has been announced officially that the ice age, the million years long event of many, many glacial advances and retreats, the million-year-long ice age has been terminated. That was a study that was done recently. That actually we have enough CO2 in the atmosphere now, just doing our normal daily stuff, that the prospects of another glacial advance in the series is now basically zero. Also, I have said many times on this channel that in the future, who knows how far, 20 years, 50 years, something like that, all the ice on the planet will melt. There won't be any ice in the Arctic, no floating sea ice. There won't be any ice on Greenland. There won't be any glaciers in the Alps. There won't be any glaciers in the Rocky Mountains. And Antarctica will probably melt too. And it doesn't have to be completely melted, but let's say it's half melted or even a third melted. It's enough to raise the sea level, enough to destroy civilization. We don't need all the ice to melt, but eventually it will all melt. But by the time it all melts and we get the 270 feet of sea level rise and all the other knock-on effects, we'll be gone. Will be gone. At least we civilized human beings with a civilization and an internet and modern medicine, all that will be gone. All that will be gone. What will we be doing with our lives after all of that is gone? I don't know. I wrote the book. So we are geoengineering. We've been doing it hand over fist for certainly 200 years, if not 300, if not longer. So here Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying it's going to be a felony offense. Are you going to charge people driving in their cars with a felony? Because that's what they're doing. They're spewing shit into the atmosphere that's changing the weather. Or are you going to arrest all the executives and CEOs at all these big energy companies and these fossil fuel industry in particular for modifying the weather and the climate? Are you going to do that? You're going to charge them with a felony? Are you going to charge the leaders of the free world with sweeping this under the rug when they knew for a fact it was changing the weather and changing the climate by burning fossil fuels and putting all the CO2 into the atmosphere? Because that's geoengineering. Marjorie, it's geoengineering. We've been doing that for a long time. We've been doing that for the entire Industrial Revolution and probably longer. We've been doing that. So you're going to arrest all these people? Because that's what they're doing. And the answer, of course, is no. Of course, she's not going to do that. She's not going to. They'll word this very carefully so that CO2 emissions are specifically excluded. It's only chemtrails. It's only things that are intended to sterilize the white males in North America. That's the thing we're worried about. Oh, and modifying the weather, deliberately modifying the weather. Can't do that. Can't deliberately modify the weather to flood Texas. That's going to be a felony. If you modify the weather to flood Texas in a way that nobody was expecting and had no reason to believe was possible, even in Flash Flood Alley, that's a felony. If you're modifying the weather to flood Texas and make those people suffer, those good Christian people suffer at their Christian megachurch, that's a felony. We're going to make that a felony. You're going to be charged with a felony. But all this CO2 Texas is a major oil state here in the U.S. And the U.S. is a major oil producing country. Is that a problem? Are the Texans doing something illegal, a felony, by contributing to this problem? Of course not. So that was my second point. The scientists talking about geoengineering have officially put their head in a noose by talking incessantly about geoengineering. Even if it's well intended, those people have now put their head in a noose. That's it. They're done. You should stop talking about this. Don't ever talk about geoengineering ever again. It's stupid. It's juvenile. It's ridiculous. It's Star Trek level bullshit. And just don't talk about it. Oh, but techno-triumphalism. Oh, but problems can be solved. No, this is stupid. And now it's going to be a felony. Well, there you go. Now it's a felony. For just for even entertaining the thought, it's a felony. So stop talking about it. Shut up about it. It was always a bad idea. And are we ever going to talk about the actual geoengineering? Where we're actually doing something that's actually modifying the weather and modifying the climate on a daily basis? We're doing this every single fucking day. We're going to talk about that? No. No, we are not going to talk about that. We'll talk about conspiratorial things that the reptilian scientists are doing about geoengineering to harm, and chemtrails to harm the white males of North America and sterilize them, and white genocide. We'll talk about that. We will not ever, foursquare never talk about the actual geoengineering project, which is using CO2 from fossil fuels to enhance the greenhouse effect. There you go. We'll make up shit to persecute people and demonize the scientists, and we will never talk about the actual thing. The actual thing. The real conspiracy to change the actual weather and the fucking climate. We will never talk about that. It is absolutely real. We are doing it every single day. I'm not going to talk about it. Conspiracies involving reptilian scientists and sterilizing the white males of North America and chemtrails and fluoride in the water and all this conspiracy shit, absolutely all day we'll pass laws, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to have laws up on the books for every goddamn thing you can think of. But the real geoengineering? Nope. Nope. And this is why we can't have nice things. This is why we can't save ourselves from global heating. And we're not going to. We can't, and we're not going to. It's as simple as that. So there you go. I hope you found that entertaining or not. I don't really care. It's the truth. That's what's happening. read them and weep. And as always,